Good morning, Geauga County, Lake County, Northeastern Ohio. You are listening to the Voice of Geauga, where you're going to be entertained, enlightened, and informed every weekday morning, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. I'm Skip Claypool. I've got Jonathan Broadbent with me, and
Good
the
morning, everyone.
the fantastic former county commissioner Tim Lennon, who were all upset that he didn't run the last time, but that didn't
Back
happen.
again,
So,
Dave.
yeah.
This is part two.
So
Yeah.
yesterday we had a pretty lively show.
Yeah.
We are up and running on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. If you want to be engaged, if you want to call into the program, call us at 440-946-9468. And this program is brought to you this morning by Great Lakes Outdoor Supply and our new sponsor, Chardon Post 6519 out of Chardon. And so we'll start this conversation. Jonathan, I'll flip this over to you. I thought maybe we would have a little bit of a conversation today about this whole property tax issue. I got sent a video last night from John Plechnik, and he was on fire. I haven't finished listening to it yet, but I didn't realize his background. Outside of being an attorney, he's apparently got a degree in tax. He's also got a degree in, I forget the other. There's 3 degrees that went together that gave him an excellent background for evaluating this whole property tax thing. I also did some homework myself on creating a balanced uh, system of sales tax, income tax, and service fees, just to play around with numbers. And the numbers don't look too bad, actually. So I thought maybe we'd have a conversation about the folks that are out there trying to misinform, inflame emotion, and all that kind of stuff. So that's one topic we have. And Tim, you've got a lot that you wanted to say, but let me flip it
Yeah.
over to Jonathan. Let's get the conversation started.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kick things off by suggesting that people find Joseph and Sarah Chalk on Facebook. That's Chaulk. By coincidence, I know this person professionally. I think that may be why they show up in my Facebook feed. There's a terrific post just yesterday, and I'm assuming that's Sarah is Joseph's wife, and they just have a shared profile, but it shows up as Joseph Sarah Chalk, Chaulk. They've got some really good posts. There's one from just 10 hours ago that is really good. It's a post that's made by a recent retired Ohio County Auditor's Office. An auditor in Ohio writes about the experiences they had as an auditor, as a county auditor, from all the people approaching this person. I don't know if the author is male or female, just with tears in their eyes looking at the prospect of losing their homes. It is an impactful piece. I really suggest finding it. It's too long to read because I want to flip things over and get some feedback and opinions from Tim Lennon
Yeah, we can
as
kind
a
of
former county
back and
commissioner.
forth. Yeah.
But I think it's spectacular. Go and find it. I'll grab a link and I will include it on Voice of Geauga. But Tim, what are your thoughts on the tax issue?
Yeah, I mean, this has been, and just real quick, Skip, just to clarify, that John Plechnik, he's a Lake County Commissioner right now, currently, correct?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John. Okay. Yeah, the property tax issue obviously has been a long time simmering. I think, thing that's been bubbling up for years and years, for decades, probably decades. But it really spilled over after the COVID government infusion of trillions of dollars into our economy. That just it was like throwing gasoline on the fire, and it falsely influenced our economy in a bad way, and it caused inflation, as I'm sure everybody's very familiar, in all different markets throughout the world. But one of the markets that affected us right here at home in Geauga County, it was, I think, unique in different ways. Now, obviously, inflation was a big contributor, but it was also the housing market with the inventory exploded, and people were, for whatever reason, selling their homes because they could make obviously a good profit, but then turning them and trying to jump in and move into something bigger or whatever, and were willing to pay well over ask on some of these houses that just shouldn't even be anywhere near that. And here in Geauga County, and to even focus it in a little more where I live, is Russell Township, which is a fairly wealthy township in Geauga County overall. Home values went up over 30% here in Geauga County, 30%, and that relates right to the property tax, almost to $1 is what the rate of my property tax had gone up. It just so happened at that time there is by law, the county auditors are to do reappraisals. There's a triennial, and I think it's like a sextennial. They do appraisals throughout the years, but then they true it up every 3 to 6 years, and then I think it all just kind of came to a head at the worst time, I guess, is probably the way to put it. And so those appraisals went down, and as the market was on fire and home values were up and up, people that weren't selling their homes, which is probably the majority of us, or buying a home, which is probably the majority of us, took the brunt of that increase all at one time, and now it's coming home to roost. Now the market has quieted way down, like we all knew it would, because anybody that knows that this was not, the market was not affected by true market indicators. It was marked by, I just call it false infusion by the government and putting all this trillions of dollars into the market. It was a kind of a perfect storm, and they now we're paying for it years later, and there's no way that you could say that the value of what you're paying on your property tax now would correlate to anything that you could get on the open market today if you were to try and sell your home, I don't think. That being said, I think people have had issue beyond just, obviously the increases associated. I truly have had an issue with, and I've been fortunate enough, years ago, I was able to, buy my house relatively, in today's market, my house is cheap compared to what it would probably be today, but I was able to buy my home, and I aggressively paid that house down, paid the home and property down, and paid it off. So I don't owe the bank anything today, which is, I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. But the fact still remains, it seems as though I'm renting the property or the land under it to the county. And now, because if I don't pay my taxes, they are going to foreclose. Eventually, they'll foreclose on my house and my property, and would take it away from me, I guess. So do I truly own I believe I truly own my truck, and I truly own, my kitchen table, but do I own my home? I don't know. I don't think I probably truly own my home, because I have to pay a yearly rental, or the county government would come seize my home. So I have issue with that. Now, it seems, and I think this abolishment amendment that's, the signatures are being actively gotten. I don't know if they've gotten them all or not yet, Skid. Have they gotten all the signatures yet to be put on the ballot?
They're being very quiet about that, and for good reason,
Okay.
because you're letting it out to the other side, to the folks that oppose this effort, would just create a disadvantage, and so they're keeping it very close to the vest. But I believe that we're probably have exceeded the number of signatures that are required.
Okay. Well, so I can see the side of people's frustration, and they've been asking for reform, I think, in different ways, mainly through the way we fund our schools. I know there's been lots of frustration with, why I have to pay for other people's education. There's been frustration with the way schools have spent the money over the years. They've been very frivolous. Lots of schools now they have you've seen they have tried to tighten up their belts here and put on their best suit, trying to as you know everything has gone up. They're trying to. Some of them have, I think. But the fact still remains, it's unsustainable, I think, going into the future with all of these other levies that everybody seems to vote, 95% of the time, at least in Geauga County. I don't know what other counties, if they ever vote no or not, but it seems as in Geauga County, we just don't vote no. And then people come in and complain and say, why are my property taxes so high? Which, I think their frustration is real about their property taxes being high, but also the levies associated with the township they live in and the county levies have contributed greatly to that. We've got public libraries, we've got schools, we've got parks. We do have other services that I think in the big picture are very needed type of services. When I was a county commissioner, these things are things that, we as citizens and residents, want to be able to provide. But in the big picture, everything else takes the lion's share. We've got the schools that just, if you're looking at a pie, they're getting, probably 3/4 of the pie. And
on
county government,
it's around 60% in Ohio.
60%. Okay. So now county government, I think, has been a very small slice of that, but we're starting to see that thing really, really expand. And it seems as though it's on a trajectory and doesn't want to get off the rails of getting bigger and expanding. And Geauga County, I thought, was always kind of unique and different and trying to keep that tamped down and just kind of do the best with what we had and not trying to duplicate maybe surrounding counties and expanding. Obviously, the population's grown a little bit in Geauga County, but not a lot. I mean, it's still a bedroom county, bedroom communities, and we have, small industry, not a whole lot.
Thankfully.
Yeah, right.
Keep it that way.
And that's
hey,
what
Tim, we're coming up on a break. I want to interject a question, and it seems to me this will be a question we'll come back to from the other side of the break. But actually, this is a question for both you and Skip. Having served as county commissioner, the topic comes up regularly with Brian Massey on Ohio Political News of that apparent disconnect between people voting for levies and people being very concerned about very high property taxes. And I think there's an argument to be made that there are people that don't understand the correlation. When you start to get into inside mills versus outside mills, and people's eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
But at its core, there has to be better understanding, I believe, publicly, between checking the box to approve additional levies and ongoing levies, and the fact that we have to pay for those levies in the form of taxes. So when we come back, I'm going to pose that question to both Skip Claypool and Tim Lennon, both having served as county commissioners here in Geauga. Remember, you can join the conversation at 440-946-9468 and email questions. You can email voiceofgeauga@gmail.com. Don't forget to join the conversation on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook as well. We'll come back with more on the other side of the break.
Thank you.
Mics are off.
All right, so we are going to come back. I hope you don't mind me interjecting that question.
No.
I mean, it just seems to be, that comes up regularly on Ohio Political News.
There is a disconnect.
I mean, there's a total disconnect. He's looking at Lake County, where everybody is like in an uproar. They're like, why are our taxes are so high? It's outrageous. And everybody is signing the petition to abolish property tax. And then everybody looked at the levies, and they're like 90% of them all passed.
Yeah.
We're like, what?
And I think, I think people are willing to pay for that type of stuff, either to help their fellow surrounding neighbors, whether they're services of those, or it's to have great parks or have great schools and libraries. I think people are obviously willing to do that, and they're very generous in that. But it's then there's the other component, I think, which is your home, and that being associated to your home. I truly like the idea of pay to play or service type, some kind of hybrid of those two. Where I live in Russell Township, for example. How much does it cost every year for my fire, my police, plowing, paving? Okay, send me a bill. Let's break it up. How many homes are in my township? I don't know, like whatever. Divvy it all up. Maybe the businesses, if there are, like a big box store, maybe they have to pay a different type of formula than me, but as a homeowner, and you have to actually own your home. This can't be like Cap Ventures, buying and selling,
Yeah.
And send me the bill. Send me the bill. What is it? I don't know. I mean, right? Like, and then all that other kind of stuff, like say a library, whatever, or Metzenbaum, for example, which I have no problem paying my taxes for Metzenbaum, trying to help disability, stuff like that, if it's reasonable. And I think all that would shrink too, because not just in dollars, but I think just in overall, just administration and everything. And if it's a library, for example, you want a library and you're the one.
30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. The issue is that if you make the price of it clear and easy to understand and transparent, it will come down. If you make it opaque and difficult, then it stays high.
Yeah, part of the problem is people aren't seeing the
10 seconds.
huge.
10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and returning guest Tim Lennon. Before we went to the break, I was asking the question about people's philosophy and their ideology, their beliefs and understanding of taxes. At its core, I believe that if taxes and what we pay for the services that we get were clear, easy to understand, and transparent, then people might balk at how much we spend on things that many of which are arguably not great return, not good service. If we're talking about schools, for instance, where 60% of our property tax goes on average, and if we're ending up with 30% literacy rate, that's a national average, people would balk if they knew the actual cost of putting a child through school. But I'm asking the question of both former Commissioner Skip Claypool and Tim Lennon, what do you think happens in that social disconnect? When you have people that say, I'm very concerned about high taxes, but I will check the box to raise and continue levies.
So
what makes that happen?
Let me jump in here, Tim, real quick.
Yeah, sure.
I want to make a quick point, then I'll flip it over to you.
No, that's good.
Part of the issue, and I've seen it both as a township trustee and as a county commissioner, and then observing and being very involved with government, generally speaking. Now, people, as you have said, Tim, are very generous. But part of the problem is they don't see the budget day in and day out for each of the entities, whether it's the library or school or Metzenbaum or whatever. We tend to beat up on the schools, sometimes I think unfairly, when we ought to be focusing across the board holistically. There's so much fat in the system, and people don't see it. They don't see the budget or how much cushion a township trustees have. Before we got going on the program, we talked about Russell and the amount of the huge carryover that they've got in Russell. But the libraries, when you and I were commissioners and Ralph was a commissioner, one of my biggest regrets was not fighting harder to push back on the huge levy and tax increase that the library is doing. And they've just they're building Taj Mahal libraries, and sometimes I question what those are all about. But people don't see the huge inefficiency and big cushion of tax. The government is just horribly inefficient across the board. I mean, we talk about the state and city, and they, you give them $10, they're going to spend $10. They're going to spend $15, and so we don't in business. We're often focused on making it lean. We cut 10% across the board just to force efficiencies within business. We don't do that in government. We give them more and more money because they ask for it, and they'll spend every dollar that you give them, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
And so we have
Absolutely.
to stop giving them so much money and let them feel the pain a little bit, because that's going to make more efficient government. And that's part of the issue. People vote for a library because they love libraries, or when somebody says the word police, everybody pulls out their wallet. Instead of being rational about it, we want police, but we also need effectively run organizations. So anyway, with that said, we've got to get, and this property tax movement, part of the value of it is it's forcing us to look at those things a little bit closer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Everything you said, Skip, is right, and it is. It's like seeing the forest or seeing a one single tree. If you look at the single tree on its own, but and obviously everybody's when a levy is up, they're very hyper focused on that certain little sliver of the pie and making sure that's funded. But you add the whole thing up, and what do you have? And you hit it right on the head. And this has been something I complained about, or not complained about, but just noticed for a long, long time was Geauga County is we have certain elected officials that have spending problems, and we all know who it is right now. It has major spending problem, but we have a revenue collection problem. We are collecting way too much revenue. Just for example, when I first started as Geauga County Commissioner back in 2016, 2017, just for example, the general fund, that is under the county commissioner's purview and is our budget, I guess, that we would control. It was all the departments under our hiring authority. Was roughly around 36 or 38 million, give or take. Today, and I haven't been following it as closely over the last couple of years, but just, vaguely paying attention the last year or so, I've heard it's, 55 to 57 million dollars. 38 to 57 million dollars. Now, that seems like a pretty big jump just on its face. So you would think, what are we doing differently? We're doing something differently. I mean, are we expanding services? Are we providing new services, different services? What is it? I mean, it's got to be, or is it just straight out inflation, the price of doing business? So be it. But no, it's because sales tax has been off the chart. So we've been collecting sales tax for the last 3-4 years. It's just gone on a trajectory. That money rolls in. All the property tax is like clockwork. That keeps coming in. That went up 30% or so. I know our current auditor, Chuck Walter, loves to pat himself on the back for throwing a few crumbs back, like $1 million here, $1 million there, and trying to take credit for all that. And but that really, in the big picture, on its face, the hypocrisy of it is he's the biggest offender when it comes to the spending. Our current auditor. I mean, his budget. He's hammering on all these townships and all these trustees and all the Geauga County departments and about their budgets, and if they have a little too much carryover, if they're trying to save money for something, he would, this budget commission, which is made up of the prosecutor, Chuck Walter, the auditor, and the treasurer, would publicly flog them, trying to grandstand to make themselves look like these big tax hawks for the public in the newspapers, and then turn around. And meanwhile, they're out there. Their budgets are the biggest ones expanding. So what are we doing differently? We're expanding the spending because Skip just said it. If you give them $10, they're going to spend 12. If you know what I'm saying. And they're getting ready for the next budget the next year. So we've seen these budgets in certain little pockets with certain elected officials, and this is why it's so important with this upcoming election. I hope people are paying attention, really. In this primary, this is like our Super Bowl in Geauga County, is this primary. And I know you have some new candidates coming up this week, coming up to introduce themselves, and I hope people get behind some of these new, because we need some new leadership in Geauga County. I'm just going to tell you, unless you want to keep going down this same path and this same road of this big spending, and watching Geauga County from a sleepy little county that tried its best to stay under the radar and keep its head down, and not turn into like Cuyahoga County. We're starting to turn into
don't Cuyahoga or Geauga. And Tim,
we're turning into a little mini. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want that. Don't Cuyahoga or Geauga. A couple of great comments. We've got Gardens of CH commented that generational wealth in the form of property is being decimated.
Yeah.
Sharon CG on Rumble says, I don't think understanding the tax is the issue. For years, we have had to tighten our belts, give up a lot of things. We need to see that these entities are doing the same thing, and they're not. When you see these $400,000 office renovations and things like it, remember you can call in, join the conversation at 440-946-9468. We're going to come back with more on the other side of the break.
Looking for a kitty, gonna look in every corner of the city till I'm wheezing like.
Mics are off, mics are off.
There's some great comments in here.
Yeah, good.
Nana Sherrill, my property tax bill back in 2008, we have Wycliffe library tax, and my brain just keeps going back to that notion. If people knew what you're paying, then people would balk. But when you
I don't know if
bury
they would.
it,
I don't know. I think it's bigger than that, Jonathan. Like I think that people will keep paying. You know, especially in Geauga. Like I just think that people like those services, and you almost got to carve that out as something separate. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not sure that we agree. If you send them a bill and actually see a number, then people will balk.
Oh,
if
I
they
see
know
what
it's
you're saying.
costing, if they knew how much it's costing them,
Like a service fee.
But when you check the box that and I see it in finance all the time. In these service fees, a factored 0.000378% based on mills, assessed on a daily basis or whatever. People don't know what that means. They're like,
no,
what?
I got you.
It's this cloudy thing. If these things happen, then your fee will be assessed as a component of your tax.
Jonathan, will you make sure to remind me on this next segment? Let's talk about these education sessions that the auditor's doing, this self-promotion for himself with the League of Women's Voters. And
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the propaganda. That they're not listening to the other side of the story here.
We need to hammer the League of Women Voters because they are.
Oh, well, Chuck Walter's the one who's doing this.
Yeah.
And Chuck, here's another quick little fact. Chuck Walter had the opportunity. Remember about those reappraisals I was just talking about? He had an opportunity, and I told him to do this. I said, do not accept the appraisal. I said, we all know these aren't real. This is not a real appraisal. I said, don't sign it. Just say, I reject your appraisal. And he wouldn't do it.
It absolutely makes sense. I mean, I'll tell you, I do a lot of posting for Unwoke Academy. One of the most successful posts, most viewed, has to do with BlackRock, Blackstone, and institutional managers like them buying residential properties.
Oh.
It's happening all over the nation.
Flipping.
And when they can afford to buy your property for 130% of the value, it artificially drives up home prices, skyrockets them, and then
they dump them.
They're assessed based on that.
Yeah. It's always in the rear. You're paying in the rear, right? Like you're paying today on what it was.
Right. But try to get a devaluation. Try to get a property tax assessment that says, well, property prices have gone down, so we're going to charge you less. That never happens.
Right.
So the moment there's a concept that, and somebody's actually in the chat asking about when the next assessment is. Gardens of CH is asking if
it goes every three is like the like it's called a triennial, and then the 6 years, the biggest one that hits for real. The 3 year is kind of like the true up, and then 6 is boom.
Yeah. Well, Trump is making some moves to stop institutional buyers from buying
30
homes.
seconds. 30
That's her.
seconds.
And that would be big because these companies have so much money.
We need more than that, though.
Yeah, we need a lot more than that. You're right.
No, it's a. Oof.
10 seconds, 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and returning guest Tim Lennon. We have two former county commissioners here, and we're asking some questions. We've got some great questions in the Rumble chat. Remember, you can also call in if you'd like to join us on air at 440-946-9468. One of the things that came up during the break are these, what they're calling sort of education sessions. You can't see it, but I'm air quoting that. Education sessions, from that involve the League of Women Voters. We've talked on this show before about dubious suspicions around League of Women Voters and their leanings, but that aside, we have this sort of roving cartel of people that go around trying to convince people using scare tactics that right-sizing our taxes and getting that chopping axe away from our homes would be somehow this bad thing. So, Tim, what do you know about that? What are these education sessions doing?
Yeah, so this has been, again, this has been a train on the tracks coming for a long time. People have been seeing this coming, and again, this just perfectly correlates with an upcoming election primary. So, keep all that in mind. If you look at the 30,000-foot view and the picture of all this, there's a reason for everything, and timing is impeccable. So there's been an announcement with, you mentioned the League of Women's Voters, who, locally, is maybe a little bit different than nationally, but they have actively joined forces with our county auditor, or vice versa. I don't know, either way. But they've been very in lockstep together. Our current auditor, Chuck Walder, the League of Women's Voters have formed a very tight bond over the last few years in partnership, and they seem to very much enjoy each other's company in different aspects in getting information out together. And so there's been an announcement that there's going to be, I think, maybe either 2 or 3 of these, like you said, air quotes, education sessions, which I was somewhat looking forward to watching or going to learn, because I thought, well, they would bring both sides of this argument, or I don't even know if it's an argument, but bring both sides of competing views to the table to say, okay, here's the county and local government that is saying the sky's falling, and it really, to me, it's a lot of fear mongering and propaganda as to why to keep things the same. Because really, I mean, it's self-preservation. If you truly look at it, the schools, which I'm sure they're shaking in their boots, are thinking, oh my gosh, all of our administration and all of our this and all all of our retirement, and that's the way. And I get it. Your head is in the chopping block there. Same goes for county government. We've got a very expanding, fast-growing Geauga County, and I'm sure, and it sounds as though Lake County's a few steps ahead of us in expanding their local government. And same thing, this is self-preservation. We've got thousands of different employees with elected officials who seem to be, we've got them in Geauga County that want to form unions now that are supporting this move, which I'm just blown away in Geauga County that we're even talking about this now. But they have, so these learning sessions or education sessions were anything but, and I think Skip was in person attending with one of the main founders of the Abolish the Property Tax movement in Ohio, was in attendance, but they weren't invited. League of Women's Voters did not invite these people, the other side, to listen to maybe their side of the story or the other side of the coin. They just got up there. Chuck Walder, our auditor, got up and gave some definitions of, some very complicated formulas as how he establishes, valuations and accepts the appraisals for our homes and properties in Geauga County.
It sounds like they didn't want the other side of the
No,
conversation. They didn't allow it.
these are propaganda sessions, and I spoke up and pointed out that Brian Massey was in the back of the room, one of the founders of the Just Abolish movement. And let's be clear, the League of Women Voters is anything but nonpartisan. They're anything but honest. They're actually dishonest. And they manipulated all of the questions. People were handing in questions, and they manipulated which questions were going to be asked. This was a contrived session. These, what they call education sessions, are propaganda sessions, and that really upsets me because some of the people I know that were on these panels.
And I would even take it a step further, that it's very cunning. I believe, the timing with the elections coming, this is, again, is a propaganda in many different ways. I think this isn't only just propaganda for the pro-tax group, but it's also propaganda for upcoming election. And I know there's been, for example, this auditor and other elected officials have been accused, for example, Tim Grendel, of self-promoting himself from the bench, using county resources to promote himself. Well, what do you think this is? This is the exact same thing. This is, like I said yesterday, this is them circling the wagons, to protect their kingdoms and protect their budgets and their ever-growing headcount going on for example, in Geauga County. I mean, the headcount in certain areas is just exploded, and along with that has gone salaries and just the price of health insurance and with retirement packages and everything else that goes with having an employee. If we have an employee that's making $100,000, it truly costs the county well over $200. It's probably $225 to employ that person.
When you put the whole compensation package together, that's a good opportune moment to interject a comment from Sharon C.G. Sharon C.G. says, wasn't the new building over by the hospital, referring to the one on Ravenwood, wasn't that supposed to save us money because we were spending so much on maintenance for all the other county buildings?
Exactly. That's a good example. Now, there was a good example of good fiscal responsibility by the county commissioners at the time. No levy was, there was no levy or something put out to go build that building. That was good planning from decades ago of former county commissioners that were looking at this more like a business and knowing that we had to move out of the facilities. And if anyone's familiar where county government was and where it is now, it was sorely needed. But yeah, that's a great point. The whole point was to centralize everything in the center of the county and get everything under one roof and get rid of all these multiple rooftops and multiple heaters and air conditioners and all this other stuff, and get rid of those properties and put them back out on the market and let the market, the private sector, take care of that. Well,
it seems like that would have been great if that had actually saved us money. I want to pause right there. We actually have a caller on the line. We've got George from Chesterland. You're on Voice of Geauga, George.
Hello.
Hi, George.
Hi. My comment was, unfortunately, the people that the League of Women Voters put up there to speak on the issue, that they were kind of on defense. They didn't want to have a change of ideas as far as what alternatives there could be to property taxes. All they wanted to do was be on the defense as if we're trying to defund schools and defund our townships. We love our townships, love our schools. We just want to see a different way of funding them. That's my opinion of the end of property taxes.
George, can I ask, were you there? Did you go and attend?
Yes, I was there. I was at that meeting, yes.
Thank you for going and doing that.
George, this is Tim, and I couldn't agree with you more. I watched it via Zoom or a replay of it. I wasn't there in person, so I didn't get the full sense of the room, but I totally agree with you. They had a Kenston school superintendent, a couple township trustees, and I believe the fiscal officer, the wife of the Geauga County Auditor, Chuck Walter, his wife Karen Walter, as the panel. And I agree with you 100%. They were so on the defense and protecting what they're doing and defending how it's done instead of being open to change. And I think that's all people are really asking. They're not saying we want government to fall on its face and to get rid of the police and fire and have no roads and go back in time. People are more than generous and willing to participate and continue to fund different services, needed services. But the point is, why is my property, the land it sits on, attached to anything that in taxes in that way? That component of it needs to be separated, and then also the service side of it needs to be separated. Those are two separate things. Those are in my mind. And give me a number for what it costs to pave and plow fire and police in Russell Township where I live, and send me a bill.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? We're actually coming up on a break. I'm going to interject. Somebody posed the question, what does it actually cost to administer property taxes in Ohio? I've actually run some of my own numbers. I'll cross-reference with Brian Massey and see if he's come up with some calculations.
I have some numbers on that too.
Approximately $150 million. That is the cost to assess and administer. And that means that we have to trust the state to assign realistic property values. We're going to come back with more on the other side of the break. Remember, you can join the conversation at 440-946-9468. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
And there's no time for fussing.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
All right. Good. So I wanted to interject that. That was a good question.
That's amazing,
Hey,
John.
hey
And I didn't know
Jonathan,
that.
the number across the state of Ohio is closer to 800 million to manage property tax.
I'm coming back with that. I'm going to lead with that. Skip, where 800 million? Oh my God.
800 million. It's 24 billion for schools alone. Oh, no, it's 24 billion for property tax collected across the state of Ohio. 24 billion. And
Well,
so,
those are the taxes collected, but to administer the collection of those taxes.
800 million. 800
You're
million.
saying 800 million.
So
Yes.
that would be like to break it all the way down to a local level, like say the auditor's office with
About
their
2 million.
appraisal department.
About 2
Yeah.
million in
Yeah.
Geauga County. About $2 million.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a huge number. So you keep hearing from people like, oh my gosh, like DeWine and everybody. We have to raise taxes to, sales tax to 17 to 20% and whatever. Where are we going to come up with $24 billion? Not even bothering to glance at the waste, fraud, and abuse in our system, and not even considering the recent skyrocketing of our spending in Geauga County.
And I almost the waste, fraud, and abuse. Like let's just say that's a percentage of this. Like let's just for
30
arguments.
seconds. 30 seconds.
But I almost think it's the institutional hamster wheel is really the problem. It's like
I like that term. I think you're spot on. It is. It certainly feels that way. It's awful.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but look at the qualifications, the resumes of the
10
people
seconds.
we elect.
10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga. We are discussing all things property taxes and what we get in return for those taxes. That's an important part of the equation as well. During the break, Skip interjected a very interesting number. I did some rough sketch back of the napkin calculations to figure out what it costs Ohio to administer property taxes, and I came up with 150. abolish property taxes. So,
No, I mean, I've got all kinds of numbers and I've cross-referenced those numbers a number of times. And so it's crazy. And I actually have numbers I've asked ChatGPT and Grok and some of the other AI tools to help kind of do an analysis. So let's say we replace property tax with some other combination of taxes. What would that mean? And it's interesting what they come up with. So, I mean, and I won't bore us right now. We don't have enough time in this program to get into a lot of the details. But there is a very good solution that's a mix of service fees and sales tax and local income taxes. Maintaining control was a primary criteria as I was doing my investigation, because local control, it means a lot. If you have state of Ohio trying to manage things, the state of Ohio hasn't demonstrated that they're very good at handling our taxes anyway. So local control is important to me. But yeah, the numbers are very interesting. But the other side won't talk about the numbers. Get Chuck Walker to talk about the numbers and how much it costs, how much his organization, what the overhead is for him to manage property tax. Now, interestingly or ironically, he actually did bring that up. If property tax were done away with, he would lose like a third of his staff or something. He said that in the last meeting, which I found fascinating.
before the show started,
on a trajectory just in the last 3-4 years of watching their spending going up, and it's because, again, back to we do have a spending problem because we have a revenue collection problem, and it's just this vicious circle. As soon as you bring that cash in, they unfortunately, we have elected officials who are very much in favor of getting that money out the door as fast as possible. As soon as it comes in, it needs to be allocated and spent. Okay, so they don't like to have on their books large carryovers because it looks bad to them. So they need to, basically they're dreaming up new ways to spend the money when it's not necessary a lot of times. What are we doing differently that we were doing 5 years ago to justify going from 38 million to 55 million? Like what changed? Did we pick up a new agency? Are we doing something new? Are we standing on our head or chewing? I mean, what are we doing? Nothing different. It's just we've got more money coming in the door, so we're spending more money. So we'll go hire more people, or we'll pay them more. Or you know what? I got a great idea. We'll do both. We'll hire more people and we'll pay them more because inflation's so high and it's so hard to employ people and every excuse in the book. It's just this vicious hamster wheel that we're on that never ceases to get off. And so locally, we just had the township trustee, or not the township fiscal officer here in Russell Township. It's our Geauga County auditor's wife just reported that they're having a overage of $4.8 million carryover when it was projected to have $1.5 million. Now, if this was anybody else other than his wife, I believe, the auditor's wife, this would have been a public flogging of any other fiscal officer. They would have put this on every local newspaper and, chastise them for having such a large carryover, and they're hoarding money. That's the one they love to kind of bump their gums and talk down their nose at everyone, hoarding money.
So hoarding money, it seems, based on observation, in the context of government, if you're accused of hoarding money, it means that you haven't yet creatively found ways of spending money.
Exactly.
Like that $400,000 office renovation that we keep recently talking about.
There's just one example.
It's one example. And the ADP office with their, whatever it is, 19 to 21 people, and they're all getting overtime, and they all get huge raises. You brought that up yesterday.
Yeah.
At some point, it boils down to we, the people, being upset enough that we put our foot down and say no, and that's a big part of the reason.
And I
for
think
Voice
that's
of
the
Geauga.
I think that's the reaction you're seeing statewide. With this referendum or amendment that wants to be put on the ballot. People and the state of Ohio and the powers to be that are pro property tax and are fighting this are this is really a reaction from the people. They have had enough. They've had enough, and they keep saying, oh, maybe we'll reform it, next year, and we need to talk about reform and reform. Well, the people have been waiting, holding their breath, and they can't breathe anymore, and
Right.
and the perfect wave is dumped over their head, and they're done, and this is their only way to respond, and I totally get it, and it does. I will admit, what's the plan? What's the plan? Is there a plan if let's just say that this gets on the ballot and the people vote to abolish property tax? What's the plan? I would like to hear that plan, and I'm sure there's a ton of good ideas out there to do this a different way, but again, it's the vicious hamster wheel. We've got the institution protecting itself that has all the levers of control and the power and the money and the influence, and they don't want to change. They don't want to change. I'm
They
telling
don't.
you.
They love
Well,
that money.
and Tim, they don't want to hear a plan
Nick's got
because
an idea.
they kept saying in that property tax forum that they wanted to call it, it was really a propaganda session, that nobody had a plan. And I raised my hand and said, I got a plan. They don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it.
And so I have a plan. Maybe we could talk about that plan in an upcoming show. Because
They're hoping they can outlast us or outlast the people, and they can hold their breath longer than we can, and that this thing, the election season will go by, and everything, the dust will settle, and life will move on. That's it.
They're hoping for that, and if they get their way, we know that there will be more waves, more crushing, more homeless. This, ladies and gentlemen, in my book, this is history trying to repeat in Geauga County. We've seen it before. We've seen it in East Cleveland, in Chicago, in Southern California, most of the state of California, and the West Coast. And the overtaxation, it never ends. Because as soon as they get comfortable and get used to the new $55 million, then soon that's not enough, and it's got to be $70 million.
Yep.
And then it's got to be $100 million, because the objective clearly is to continue to expand government. Tim, with our last minute, you've got the closing thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. This has been a great couple days, and hopefully I can come back again soon. And I guess my comment to the people listening and out there is really like, pay attention to who you're electing. I mean, it really, and the primaries are in Geauga County at least. This is the Super Bowl. This is not the general election. Normally is a sleeper. In Geauga County, we're always Republicans. So if you're voting in a Republican primary, it's time to get some new blood in, especially at this auditor's position. It's time to get somebody in there that is not using this as a weapon against other electeds, and controlling this in a way and trying to work with the people and keep the values low in Geauga County and get back to it.
Remember, everybody, to mark your calendars. Tomorrow, we've got Nikki Frenchko, Joe DeBoff on Thursday, and we've got Abby King joining us on Friday. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.